Good evening. My dear friends, it is a great honor to be celebrating together the teachings and impact of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. In a few days will be the 27th yahrzeit of the Rebbe, 1994, and tonight is actually the 80th anniversary of the Rebbe and his wife arriving to the shores of America from the throes of the abyss of Nazi Europe. So how fitting to celebrate together one people, one heart. My friends, Washington State, in Oregon, in Alaska, Idaho, British Columbia. We are different in so many ways, but at the same time, we share a common destiny, a common vision, and a common goal. And it was the Rebbe, as a true visionary, who dedicated his entire life in teaching us how we can be diverse and yet find harmony. The Rebbe was once asked by someone, he said, Rebbe, we're already after World War II. We've gone through such terrible times, but now it's an age of prosperity, an age of peace. Technology is connecting us all over the world, and all the other advances that we're experiencing, medical breakthroughs, standard of living, longevity, life expectancy. What is our mission today? And the Rebbe responded that as we connect more and more, and there are so many different types of people, each with different opinions, each with different perspectives, our mission is to create a unity among this diversity. Harmony within diversity, where we appreciate the individuality of every person and their unique contribution, different than another's, but yet we all complement each other in one harmonious symphony. In other words, one people, one heart. The body is made up of many parts, but there's one heart that beats within us, and it pumps the blood that circulates throughout the entire body, from head to toe, every organ, every limb, every cell. So here we are, celebrating this unity and honoring and celebrating the Rebbe and his great contributions. You know, my dear friends, the sign of something that is true is when it lasts, when it endures. We are 27 years from when the Rebbe left this physical world. And yet, the Rebbe's impact, his teachings, are more powerful today than ever before. That's a tribute to something that is true. Because it's not just about an individual, it's about the message, it's about the approach. So what I'd like to do this evening is to dig into this, to come away with understanding the formula, the methodology, the algorithm, if you wish, that the Rebbe presented to us and empowered us with. Now, the Rebbe's teachings are vast, and it's very difficult to sum it up in just a few points. And yet, there are some key points, fundamental principles that stand out, which capture and reflect the revolution that the Rebbe created. I had the unique privilege for many years to sit at the Rebbe's feet and to absorb, to retain, to listen to the Rebbe's words delivered on Shabbat and the holidays when no recordings were made and no notes were taken. So we had to remember verbatim hours and hours of these talks. I've been deeply immersed in these teachings almost all of my life. Some of you may know me as the author of Torah Meaning for Life, distilling these teachings into a language relevant, accessible to every human being on earth. So what I'd like to share are 5 cornerstones, you can say methodologies, the formula that empowers and has the capacity to transform our lives individually and collectively. 5 principles that capture the Rebbe's unique approach to the challenges of our time. We're not living in easy times. The upheavals, the uncertainties, the disruptions, beginning with COVID, and just recently, the unrest and the hostilities, both in this country and of course what is so close to our hearts, in Israel. And there's so many unknowns. So now more than ever, these teachings stand out as beacons of light that can give us direction, guidance, inspiration, courage, and strength to forge ahead and truly build a better future for ourselves and for our families and for our communities and for the entire globe. So let's go through these 5 principles. It's always nice to find some acronym. I couldn't find one really that was fitting to the content, but it came down to being MIPOD. If you wish, you can call it MyPod. M for mission, I for initiative, P for persistence, O for opportunities, and D for destination. And I repeat again, by no way can anyone capture the Rebbe's scope, the panorama, the horizons in 5 or 10 or 20 principles. And yet, we can discover and appreciate some of this power and potency through these 5. So let's begin. Mission. One of the most fundamental principles the Rebbe taught. Literally in every talk he delivered, in every audience that he met with others, in the notes he wrote, in his letters, is that each individual on earth was sent here on a mission. And that's the driving force of your life. Now in business, everybody knows, no business can function without a mission statement. But most of us don't think about it on a personal level. Can you function without your personal mission statement? We can manage, you see that happening all the time. But is our life being lived to the fullest? Are we living up to the calling for which we were sent to this world? And the Rebbe identified and said, mission. Perhaps due to the success and prosperity of our generation, which often leads to apathy, mission was more important than ever to create that focus, that sense of urgency, that sense of laser focus toward why you are here. The Hebrew word that some of you may be familiar with is shlichut, shliach. Every emissary and ambassador of the Rebbe's is called a shliach. That means a mission, a person sent on a mission. But the truth is, it's far broader than that. God sent every human being on a mission. No one would be here on this earth, explains the Rebbe, if they were not chosen. Your soul was chosen to come to this time and this place where you are to fulfill something that you and only you can do. I remember how often the Rebbe would emphasize this. I remember even once him looking around at a farbrengen, at many people, and saying, every one of you has something to contribute that no one else that ever lived or ever will live can contribute but you. Even the great Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebecca, the great men and women throughout history cannot accomplish what you need to accomplish. We don't have the time to elaborate on the implications of that awesome statement. But just a few of them. Number one is that your life is not negligible. Doesn't matter how many people on this earth, 7 billion, 8 billion, we're not just another grain of sand on a beach. You are absolutely necessary and indispensable. Imagine if we felt that 24/7. The concept of monotony and boredom wouldn't exist. The concept of insecurity wouldn't exist. Of the fears and all the other phobias that we deal with and neurosis. Because you have a mission. And indeed, every morning, we acknowledge it by saying, Moda ani lefanecha, thank you for returning my soul to me. Yes, my indispensable soul, for renewing my contract, for giving me purpose. So whatever we do in our lives, our work, our home, entertainment, social, should all be infused with that mission. And what is the mission? The mission is to bring light and illuminate and spiritualize the material corner of the world that you occupy. And everything begins with that. When you have that mission, it informs the rest of the details. So we're all shluchim. We are all messengers. We're all ambassadors sent by God to this world to fulfill something that you uniquely can fulfill. Now that takes effort to figure out what that is. It has to fit your personality, your opportunities, the uniqueness of your own life situation, where you are, what social status you occupy, because all that is part of the signs that God gives us, the signposts, to identify what your purpose is. Principle number 2, the I, initiative. To take the initiative. If someone were to ask you, would you prefer $1 million given to you as a gift or $100,000 that you earn on your own? Let's higher the stakes. $100 million given as a gift or $10 million that you earn on your own? All of us would say, of course, the 100 million. And yet the Talmud makes an interesting statement, that a person desires more one measure that they earn on their own than 9 measures that they're given as a gift. Because of course you can buy more with more money, but you treasure and you hold precious and you value that which you make an effort to do because it's yours, you own it. So though God should bless us all with hundreds of millions and even more, the Rebbe from day one when he assumed leadership, formally assumed leadership, which is 70 years ago. It's interesting. This is a year of many anniversaries. 80 years when the Rebbe came to America with his wife, the Rebbe Chaim Mushka. 70 years from when he said his first formal Hasidic discourse, Bossi Legani. And what did the Rebbe say? After the discourse, the Rebbe said, don't delude yourself into thinking that now you've appointed me to be your Rebbe. I'm paraphrasing. That you're absolved. No. Everyone has their job to do. I don't decline from helping, but you have to take the initiative. And this became a undercurrent. In everything that the Rebbe inspired, it was always, you need to own it. When you look around and people ask the question, it's 27 years since the Rebbe is not here physically, 29 years since the Rebbe had that terrible stroke. How is it possible that Chabad is not just continuing, it's thriving? Can a company survive without a CEO? And the answer is the Rebbe is not a CEO. What the Rebbe did was he empowered, he infused each person that came in his proximity to take initiative. So every shliach, every emissary, wherever he may be, owns his position. He's not just there as a hired gun. And therefore he invests his life, his 24/7, his life and soul of himself and his wife and his family to build. Because the Rebbe understood the power of getting people to take initiative, to be a flame that rises on its own. In educational and psychological terms, it means Not just teaching people information, facts, and data, but empowering them with methodology. Not just giving them an answer to a question, but teaching them how to answer a question. Not just teaching people what to think, but how to think. That's a whole different level of education and communication when you empower someone. But what's vital there is initiative. Taking initiative. I remember in the year 1991 it was the Parsha Ba'alescha, chapter, in the fourth book of the Torah, the book of Numbers. And it talks about the high priest kindling the flames of the menorah, of the candelabra. And the word the Torah uses is to raise the flames, not to kindle the flames. And the commentary Rashi, based on the Medrash, asks the question, you kindle flames, you don't raise flames. You ignite them, you light them. Why does it say that to raise the flames? And Rashi answers, because when the high priest lit the menorah, it was incumbent upon him not just to light it, but to make sure that it catches. It takes sometimes a split second until the flame catches, to wait till the flame is rising on its own. And the Rebbe, 1991, among other times, it was one of the favorite themes of the Rebbe, said, and what happens if it burns out? He goes back and lights it. No, because it's not just about lighting a menorah, it's about the empowerment. The menorah, the candles, the light, the flame represents the flame of every soul. It's how you're supposed to communicate, how you're supposed to teach and educate and inspire. Not just to light a flame, to make sure the flames rise on their own, that the individual, even when the teacher is no longer there, is burning brightly and illuminating initiative. So in that 1991 talk, since we had the opportunity to communicate with the Rebbe all the time about questions and nuances and explaining, so I asked a bunch of questions regarding that issue, because at the end of the day, it's the high priest that lights the menorah. So is it really your initiative? And the Rebbe went back and forth and asked a bunch of questions. And the only time the Rebbe answered the following answer was then. And perhaps because this would have been the last Parsha Ba'aloscha that the Rebbe spoke to us, Le'esata, until now. And what is that? The Rebbe answered, the entire theme of the Farbrengen, the entire theme of my talk was that you need to initiate, that you need to be a flame that rises on its own, and you're asking me to answer your questions. I wasn't happy with that answer. I wanted the Rebbe's answer. I didn't want my answer. But I believe, in retrospect, when I think about it, that the Rebbe gave the answer through saying that. I'm giving you the strength to find an answer. But you need to make the effort. Take initiative. Principle number 3, persistence. When you do something good, be persistent. Not once, not twice. Make sure you never stop. Share a personal story when I was a child. I remember it was Sukkot, the holiday of Sukkot, where we sit in these portable shacks. And the roof is not a serious roof. It's evergreen. It's some vegetation. That's part of what a sukkah is about. And the year was 1966. And that sukkah in New York was, what can I tell you? It was a flood. It was raining nonstop. It didn't stop raining. Chabad, we sit in the sukkah when it rains. Obviously, we don't just sit there. When we eat a meal, we don't not eat because it rains. But the schach, which is those that the greens, the vegetation that we put on top, usually pine branches, on top of the sukkah, covers the sukkah very thickly. So in the beginning of a rain, it's great. But as it continues to rain and the roof gets saturated, it starts coming down in globs. Very unbearable. Glob down this here and down here. I was a child. I was 9 years old. The Rebbe had an annual Farbrengen on Sukkot. In the Sukkah, near 770 Eastern Parkway, the central headquarters, there was a setup, there was a larger Sukkah, not very large, but a Sukkah. The Rebbe would sit and speak. And they would sing songs and l'chaim. Regular Farbrengen was in the Sukkah. Pouring rain, the Rebbe doesn't stop what he's doing. I remember as a child, coming to the Sukkah, middle of the talk, I see the Rebbe there, I couldn't hear, especially the rain was coming down. The Hasidim were all standing there listening. Later I was told that the Rebbe, in the middle of the Farbrengen, stood up and took off his coat, which was so soaking. So people thought maybe this is ending. No, it just began. And the Rebbe said a Hasidic discourse, which had a certain twist of irony, called V'shaftem mayim b'sosen, when you will draw water with joy. Anyway, this little child, myself, walks in. I'm standing in the back, and I saw the sight. Chassidim standing, the Rebbe speaking, completely focused, oblivious to the rain. It wasn't even what he said. That image never left me, because I think about it very often. You know, in America we have a thing called a rain date. It rains, you postpone. Rain delay or postponement. The Rebbe did not have to Farbrengen that day. He could have Farbrengen another day. Or he could have been inside the synagogue, inside the shul, and without saying l'chaim or eating anything. No, but this is what he did. The custom was to Farbrengen, the Rebbe is not stopping. A persistence. I remember as a teenager standing once at an ocean. My parents in the summer rented a home. It was near the ocean, near the Atlantic Ocean. You know, a teenager, I went out for a walk in the middle of the night, standing near the sea, and seeing those waves crashing. And I was waiting. Maybe the waves will go to sleep at some point. Maybe they'll stop. No. And it reminded me of the Rebbe in the Sukkah. That type of unceasing, unwavering, unyielding commitment. The waves, they never stop. There's a certain eternity to it. And this wasn't just a nice romantic theory. It actually affected my life. When I began to teach, I remember giving a class every Wednesday night. And there's many times you have to, if you don't feel well, or you're under the weather is bad, there's a blizzard, or other excuses. But I never forgot the message. You're doing something good, there's no such thing as stopping. The persistence. In the story of Rabbi Akiva, where he saw a drop by drop of water. Even though it's a drop of water, it can pierce through a stone. That's the power of persistence. The Rebbe personified, embodied persistence. The unwavering, the unyielding. I remember Farbrengen after Farbrengen, and the Rebbe insisting and repeating, and the patience with people that were not always completely on that level. But the Rebbe's consistent persistence, awesome. And it changed worlds, and it changed people. And it changed me, and it has the power to change every one of us. You start something good, make sure you continue. Find a way to continue. Never stop something good. And even if there's obstacles, and there are reasons, and impediments, and excuses, I'm still giving this class. Wednesday night class I began in 1981. 81, 82. So we're talking now over 40 years. Well, close to 40 years. Principle number 4. Opportunities. By the Rebbe, everything is an opportunity. Whether it's a positive thing, whether it seems negative, it's an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity to accomplish something. It's an opportunity to change the very reality of a situation. Let's demonstrate it with a story as well. It's a story I have with my own father. The year is 1989. September 1989. It's Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. The Hebrew year 5750, Tafshinun, 89. My father had a mini stroke right before Rosh Hashanah. He ended up in the hospital. He had to stay in the hospital Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Not very pleasant. But that's where he was, in NYU, Manhattan. I receive a phone call from the Rebbe's secretary the day before Yom Kippur. It says the Rebbe wants to give you lekach, which is sweet honey cake, accustomed to do so in the beginning of the year, for the blessing for a sweet and healthy year. So I come running to the Rebbe's office. Outside the Rebbe's office, there's the hall, right outside the Rebbe's door. When I arrive, the Rebbe opens the door and gives me 2 pieces of honey cake and says in Yiddish, and I'll translate, this is for your father. Tell him he should have I'm giving you a sweet cake, that he should have a sweet and healthy year. And then the Rebbe smiles, a broad smile, and says to me, tell your father that when he finishes the mission for which he was sent to the hospital, he will be released. The Rebbe's words. Well, I made my way very quickly to NYU. I brought my father the cake. I told him exactly what the Rebbe said. Can you imagine? My father was in the hospital not because he wanted to be in the hospital. He had a stroke. He had no choice. The Rebbe sees a completely different story. You're there for a mission. There was no other way to get you there. It's an opportunity. My father, in his own way, he spoke to doctors. My father was a journalist. He had ability to communicate well. And he did his thing. But just to show you that this wasn't just a nice, cute statement, the day after Yom Kippur, the Rebbe's assistant, the Rebbe's chief of staff, his main secretary, is Rabbi Chadakov, who was not so well, he was already an older man at the time, comes to the hospital to visit my father, and he asks my father, he says, the Rebbe wants to know, did you finish your mission? Well, apparently he did, because a few days later he was released. Can you imagine this? How to look at life this way? Everything is an opportunity. Everything is a spiritual opportunity. Business people who own businesses, whoever they meet, wherever they go, they're always looking to find an opportunity. The Rebbe was the quintessential spiritual opportunist in a positive way. Wherever he went, wherever he sent people, wherever he saw, it was about redeeming and freeing divine sparks. Because that's what the reason you came there. You may think you're coming there for business purposes. You travel to a certain place for business purposes, for entertainment, for whatever it may be, to meet someone. The truth is, it's an opportunity that God is giving you. God leads the footsteps of a human being, and every encounter and interaction, whether you know it or not, especially the ones that are spontaneous and not planned, is an opportunity, a divine spiritual opportunity to change the situation for the better, to bring light, to bring a kind word. My father said some things to the doctors, communicated with them, inspired them, educated, but not like in a very pleasant, beautiful way. Opportunity. Everything is an opportunity. Consistent. Anytime someone wrote to the Rebbe, I have a challenge, a difficulty, I don't know, I can do it, everything was no. It's an opportunity for you to overcome the challenge. It's only there for you to bring out and draw out from you even greater strengths. And finally, my friends, appropriately, the D for destination. So just like everything, the point of departure begins with a mission, there's also the realization of the mission, the destination, the ultimate goal, the objective. The Rebbe had his sights on the destination. From when he was a little child, he writes in a letter, I always envisioned what the world would look like when there'll be world peace and the eradication of evil and injustice and war and pain and suffering. And indeed, in the Rebbe's first formal discourse delivered 70 years ago, the Rebbe states it and makes it clear. This is his first formal statement. The mission of our generation is to reach the destination. And what is that destination? In Hebrew, in the Torah language, it's called Mashiach and Geula. But in simple English, it's the fulfillment and the realization of the purpose and design for which God created its very existence itself. Think of like an engineer, builds a machine, creates a whole strategy, but there's a goal. The mission is to fulfill the goal. The goal is the destination when that machine or that project or that initiative or that venture lives up to and fulfills the purpose for which it was built. Life is that machine. The Torah is God's operator's manual, life operator's manual. Tells us what to do to make our lives work best, what not to do to avoid harm. When will we be at our healthiest, individually and collectively? When will matter and spirit be aligned? Form and function. Soul and body in one harmony? That is the destination. Everything we do today, everything we've done for thousands of years, are the building blocks that have accumulated to create that total fusion of spirit and matter, of the divine and existence, where heaven and earth meet. In simple terms, I often ask somebody, I said, who are you? And they respond by giving me their business card. I said, that's not who you are, that's what you do. Some people maybe don't understand what I was saying, but some respond to me with a sigh and say, "Oi, what should I tell you? I've been doing it for so long, what I do has become who I am." How sad. Your identity, who you are, should define what you do. Not what you do defines who you are. The captain tells the ship where to go. The ship doesn't tell the captain where to go. Judaism overall, the Torah, is God's mandate to us to teach us how to navigate and where to go. The destination is when all that will come to fruition in living up to our potential and to the world's potential, living up to the purpose for which we were all created, and that is what? As the Rebbe said in that first discourse 70 years ago, to turn the world into a home for God, a place where the divinity, spirituality is comfortable, a world where materialism is not an end in itself, but it's a means toward the pursuit of knowing God, of experiencing godliness, experiencing spirituality, a world filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. In the words of Isaiah the prophet, cited by Maimonides at the end of his classic magnum opus, Mishnah Torah. That was the focus, the mission, that we are the seventh generation from the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad Hasidus, and we will finish the job. Everything the Rebbe did was with the sights on that destination. As the years rolled on, especially in the mid-80s and late 80s and early 90s, these became prominent. The Rebbe said, we are now there, we're at the finish line. And all we need is to do one more thing to tip the scales. All we need to do is become aware that we are at the end of a marathon, with every generation carrying the baton for that leg of the marathon. But we're the last leg that will cross the finish line with the accumulative power, like a midget that stands on the shoulders of giants, of all the generations before us. Imagine how compelling that is. That is what we heard. Those that sat by the Rebbe, that listened to the Rebbe, that stood before him. This is what we heard day after day, week after week. So you can imagine when you come away with these 5 principles, MIPOD, mission, initiative, persistence, opportunities, and destination, how it completely recalibrates how you think, how you speak, and how you act. So as we honor the Rebbe, and we honor the Rebbe's teachings and their impact, and we see how they live on within us, we are the arms and legs, and with everyone we influence. Because that was the point, that we are not here just to take, but to give, to share. We are all shluchim, we are all ambassadors to carry this message. I have no doubt, and I've said this many times when I was interviewed, different media outlets, Torah Meaningful Life, I have no doubt that when the world comes to appreciate it, the world that does not know of it yet, these Rebbe's teachings, they'll recognize the Rebbe as the true first 21st century leader. Yes, the Rebbe passed away in the 20th century, but the teachings live on, and their relevance cannot be more relevant than ever as they are today. Due to our challenges, whatever was going on in the 20th century is now even accelerated. Technology is a great gift, but how to use it. Think about these 5 principles. Commit, especially during these days, to doing something in that regard. looking into your heart and soul, introspection for your mission. Taking initiative, not just being on the sidelines as a spectator. Persistence, being persistent, looking for the opportunities in everything around us. And finally, keeping your sights on the destination. We were promised, we were told, that when we do our part, we will tip those scales. And it will lead the words of Maimonides, to redemption and salvation for the individual and for the whole. Personal and global redemption. May we merit, in the schus of these special days, the 3rd of Tammuz coming up, which this event, one people, one heart, that our unity and our diversity, together, we can march toward the Geula, and tonight, the 80th anniversary of the Rebbe's arrival to America, miraculous arrival, beginning a new revolution, a new stage in the fusion of heaven and earth. Basi Legani, the discourse the Rebbe said 70 years ago, come to my garden, that the world will not just be a home, it will be a garden with delight and pleasure. May we merit that immediately, especially through our efforts, through our coming together in such a unified way. So peoples of Washington and Oregon and Alaska and Idaho and British Columbia, as well as all others that are celebrating these days and honoring the Rebbe, may our unity and diversity, that one heart, that one people, be the container that draws down all the blessings. God bless you. Be healthy, be strong, and fulfill the purpose for which you were put on this earth in the fullest possible way. I don't see any better way to honor the Rebbe and all that the Rebbe committed to and sacrificed for, that we honor during these days. Be blessed, be well. Thank you so much.